Welcome to the EZCODE Projects series setup video number 5. If you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE Projects series setup videos. For those of you that have done so, let's begin. Open up VS Code. And from the application menu, click File. From the drop-down menu, select Add Folder to Workspace. In the pop-up window, find and select the EZCODE directory created during the previous videos. Mine's under Projects. Highlight the folder and click Add. Now I'm going to open up the Explorer window, and I see that I have my EZCODE and template already open. I'll open up the source folder and then double click on the style.css. Now our file is open to the right. Let's once again load our Vue HTML file into the browser. We got the browser. If you remember, it's File, Open File, all the way through the directories until we see Vue HTML. Now, once we're done with this series, you can go ahead and create shortcuts, make bookmarks, do all kinds of different things. But to keep this simple, we're doing the same thing over and over again until we're done with the setup series. So here we go. We have the file, and there it is. Greetings to all of you. Now, we're loading our files, but the simple text could do with some changes to the way it looks. And that's the job of CSS, or cascading style sheets. We'll do the work in the browser, and then we'll copy and paste it back to our CSS file in the template directory, or type it out. Now, with the browser in view and the Elements tab open, so let's go ahead. How did we do that before? We're going to right-click over the area, or anywhere here, and click Inspect. And then our tab's developer window should open, and we have the Elements tab already selected. Highlight the div in the ID view container, or with the ID view container. So if we go over here, if these are all closed up, we're just going to open them up until we find the view container. So this one. So as I hover over everything, you can see that the left changes, but what's selected is the body. What we want to select is this one. So we'll go over it and then click select, and then you might have noticed that something happened over here on the right side. Just to show those again, you can see that there's different properties applied to each element. We're going to apply some to the view container. Now notice that the view container here, or the ID view container, also has a class property on the div element that is identical to the ID. They are not required to match, but done in this way to keep things simple. This one's known as the view container for ID, and it also has a class on it that's a view container. Just words that we made up to clarify what we're doing. The class property is a way to add colors, shapes, and document position. We can put many different CSS classes on one element, and any class we add can also cascade down to its children elements. With the div selected, on the right, click in the element.style area. So this is selected. If I look to the right, there's an element.style. It's always going to be at the top here, and I'm going to just click inside of it. You'll see now I have an icon. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to override the display property on the div. Instead of choosing block, we're going to choose flex. So once again, we can just tab through this, and then it's called flex. Now, there's lots of properties in CSS, so once again, you're not going to know all of them ever, but you will know some over and over again. This is one of them, display flex. And display flex has some associated properties. One of them is to justify content, and we can pick, in this case, there's a lot of things to pick here, but we're going to go with center. And then note that our text is now centered. So over here on the left, you can see greetings to all of you. Now click the browser refresh button. So now that we have these set in here, we're going to hit the refresh button. Notice how the CSS properties we applied have vanished and the file has returned to its original state. If we add those changes to our template style.css file and save, the changes will persist. So let's record those two CSS properties in our style.css file. The browser will load the file, so any classes we add in VS Code in the file itself will be available to the HTML document. The first class we'll add is the view container, which we already added to the div in the HTML document. So if you remember, we have the view container, there it is, and we're going to do it right here. So to add the class in the CSS document, we create a class by adding a dot in front of the class, but only in the CSS file, not in the HTML. So we'll begin typing. I created a period, a dot. I'm going to now use the already created class name. And what I'm going to do is hit enter, and I'm going to put the curly brackets on the next line, just like we do with functions. Now, if you remember what they were, the properties were display, so they automatically come up, and you can see it already gave me a colon and semicolon. Now with CSS properties, they always have the key on the left side with a colon, and then we put the value in here, and then it always ends with a semicolon, and it will tell you if you miss putting those in there. So display was flex, if you remember, and then the next one was justify content, and we used the center value. So that's great that it did all that for us. Now, guess what we need to do next since we made a change? It's save the document. We can see it needs an update. We will save it. And we're going to refresh the browser and note our changes have been applied. So let's go to the browser. And we did refresh earlier. We know that it went back to its original. And here we go. Now we have the view container. It's still selected. And we can see we have a view container class on it with the properties that we assigned. Now we're going to set up the rest of our template for CSS. So click on the body element and note that there are two properties that are applied by default. We are going to override margin and to also apply a height of 100% to expand the element the entire screen. We will also add these changes to the HTML element as well by separating the element tags by a comma, and I'm about to show you what that means. So again, here's the two properties that it has. You can see the margin right here of 8px. That's the orange box surrounding our body tag. And if we had that open and overrid it here, we would say margin 0. You can see that the orange box went away and the text actually moved up because there's no space there anymore. Now we override the body tag because there's usually one body tag, and so we want the elements that we create to have the padding and the margin and everything that we want. So we don't want the body to interfere with that. So let's go back to our file. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the top here, and we're just going to create two lines. Now, we're not talking about classes, we're talking about elements. And elements, like a div or HTML or body that you've seen already, we can just reference them without the dot. And I'm going to do body here. And then once again, in CSS, new line, curly braces, and break into it. And now we can add our properties. So if you remember, it was margin of 0, and then we had a height property we were going to add of 100%. Since we are expanding the height of the document, let's also add two more properties to our view container class. So if we go down to justify content, right underneath there, we're going to use another flex property or another property that's associated with display flex, and it's called align items center. And then just below that, we're going to put in another height of 100%. And guess what we're going to do when we're done? We're going to notice the update up here, and we're going to click and save our work. Now let's refresh the browser and note the changes. Okay, we have our file up here. Everything's good. Refresh. Oh, now the greetings to all of you has gone to the center of the entire page. Let's see what's going on there. So we have the body, which you can see is completely blue, meaning it occupies this entire space, HTML2. And if you remember over here, if we took that height property out, we can just deselect it. We can see that the body and the HTML, they're only large enough to display whatever's inside of them. So greetings to all. If I had something larger, then it would be larger. But it isn't. It just extends the entire, left to right side, and the height is only to the content. We don't want that. We want to have HTML and body. We want those to be all the way big, and then we're going to control the height that we want with our divs or whatever elements we have here. In this case, we have the view container, which we also said, make that 100%. And then the align items and justify just work by, if we deselect them, we can see everything just like in the English language, which we're using here. It's top left, so left to right, top to bottom. And that's how we read. So it always starts in the top left corner, justify content, align items, brings it back to the center. Now we're doing this setup for our template for a good reason. When we go into a new project, we're going to use this template. And the first thing we'll do is probably delete this div, and then we'll start building our own content for whatever project it is inside of the view container. So using a template in this way gives us known hooks like the ID or the class that we can use in every project to target different things inside of here. And just having whatever we're going to create centered already when we start the project, it's just really helpful to look at it so we can play around with the ideas. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is add 2 notes to our style CSS template. So let's go back to that, and we're going to go to the top and create a new line. And if you'll notice in CSS, the way to do a comment is /*, and then we can do */ like this, and then we can put whatever content we want in the middle. In this case, we're going to say this is the default CSS, so that would be all this is the default, and right below that we're going to want to put, where are we going to put our project CSS. And so we're going to put all our project CSS below here. So now we know if we have to add something to the template, then it would go up in default. But every time we copy this directory, we're going to get this same type of setup. And right here is where you're going to want to put your new classes to the project. So commenting outlines works for CSS, HTML, and JavaScript files. However, each one is a bit different. See if you can figure it out. Let's finalize our work by saving. Nice job. We have completed the EZCODE Projects series setup video number 5. In the next setup video, number 6, we'll learn how to protect our code in the browser by wrapping our code.js file into an IIFE. What is an IIFE? Let's find out together. I'll see you in the next video.